This kid didn't just shine shoes, he was polishing the foundation of a future business empire. While others set up their shoe shine stands on busy street corners, he stationed himself right in front of the central bank. And his clients? Only rich white folks. He'd clean their shoes slow and thorough, not to please, but to eavesdrop on every word about money and finance. The moment they left, he'd whip out a little notebook and write it all down. Those priceless insider tips were his treasure. His name was Bernard. From a young age, he dreamed of becoming as wealthy as the white men he shined shoes for. When business was slow, he'd climb up to the bank's windows to eavesdrop on the managers inside. But in 1939 Texas, a black boy wanting to make it big was practically a joke. When Bernard proudly showed his notes to his dad, hoping for some praise, all he got was a somber warning. Son, you were born the wrong color. In a white man's world, it doesn't matter how smart you are, you'll never make white man money. But the fire in Bernard's eyes said otherwise. He wasn't backing down. 12 years later, Bernard moved his wife and kid to Los Angeles, a city slightly more tolerant than Texas. He was determined to make something of himself, but even his relatives laughed at his ambition. Dream on, man. Black folks belong in factories, not in business. Bernard didn't argue. At the time, he was crashing in a storage room at their place. But he made a promise to his wife, we'll have our own home soon. Just wait. He started out as a real estate agent, scouting undervalued properties around the city. With his sharp business instincts, he noticed something odd. White neighborhoods had tons of vacant homes, while black communities were bursting at the seams. So he came up with a bold idea: buy up homes in white neighborhoods, then rent them out to upwardly mobile black families. That way, he'd be solving a housing crisis and making money off rent. He quickly locked eyes on a rundown apartment building, overgrown with weeds but sitting on prime real estate, right next to a black neighborhood. He approached the white landlord, Barker, offering to buy it at a bargain. But Barker wanted $35,000, and Bernard only had $30,000 to his name. So he asked, what if I pay the rest after renting it out? Barker liked his guts, but said no, he wasn't about to risk it on a maybe. Just as Bernard was about to leave, something caught his eye: a calendar on the wall, a gift from a bank manager. Boo! Light bulb moment. He rushed to that bank, but the receptionist, seeing he was black, couldn't even hide her disgust. She refused to let him in, so he waited outside until the manager left work. Then he ran up and introduced himself as a friend of the landlord, asking for a $5,000 loan to close the deal. Still, the manager turned him down. That night, Barker called. How dare you use my name to get a loan? Bernard apologized immediately, thinking he blew it. But to his shock, Barker wasn't mad, he was impressed. He agreed not only to sell the building, but to co-sign the loan himself. You knew this deal was risky, and you still went for it. That's the kind of confidence I trust, Barker told him. Bernard was speechless. This was his first property, the beginning of everything. But his troubles were far from over. As soon as he began renovations, racism slapped him in the face. A white elderly tenant stormed over, furious. You tell the landlord this. I'm not paying more rent just cause you're adding fancy paint. Bernard calmly replied, ma'am, I am the landlord. She exploded. Don't play games with me. Boy, this is a white neighborhood. You can't possibly own this place. Next thing he knew, cops were at his door. The woman accused him of impersonating a landlord and trying to scam her. Thankfully, Bernard had prepared. He showed them copies of the contract. But the officers didn't even try to hide their contempt. One of them even held the contract up to the light like it was counterfeit money. And even after confirming the paperwork was legit, they warned him, show some respect around here. This is a white neighborhood. Later that evening, the old lady blocked the door, saying construction crews couldn't work past 6 p.m. Bernard just smiled. I'm the owner. I can come and go whenever I want. The next morning, the lady moved out. She couldn't stand the thought of living in a building owned by a black man. Once she left, Bernard rented the place to a black woman. The demand was overwhelming. Every unit got rented out fast. When he paid off the rest of the loan, even Barker was blown away. He saw it clearly. Bernard was a business genius. So Barker made a new offer. I'll be the face of the deals. You run the business from behind the scenes. That way, no one knows a black man is involved. Bernard agreed. They made a killer team, buying up more properties and raking in profits. Soon, Bernard kept his promise, moving his wife into a luxurious home. But tragedy struck. Barker died in his sleep. His shares went to his widow, a hardcore racist. She gave Bernard an ultimatum. Sell your half of the business to me for dirt cheap, or I'll sue you for everything. Bernard refused. Then she played her trump card. She'd take him to court and erase him from the partnership entirely. Why? Because none of the contracts had Bernard's name. Barker had always signed on his behalf. His lawyer warned him, you're black, she's white. You won't win. But Bernard wasn't backing down. He decided to call on the bank manager who once denied him that loan. loan. Too bad, the manager had already been bribed by the widow. Still, Bernard refused to quit. Looking up at a building that housed 7 banks, he hatched a plan so bold it sounded crazy. He was going to buy that entire building and make all those banks work for him. He pitched the idea to a powerful black investor, Joe. Joe was stunned. That's the most expensive building in LA. But Bernard broke it down. 7 banks under one roof own the building, and we control loans, real estate data, everything. Joe saw the vision. Bernard wasn't a dreamer, he was a genius. Now they just needed a white face for the deal. Enter Matt, a young handyman with no racism in his bones. Bernard personally trained him golf, etiquette, math, real estate, turning him from a blue-collar worker into a corporate negotiator. When the time came, they sent Matt to negotiate. They knew the seller would overprice the building, so Bernard did his homework. He counted the lights on at night to estimate vacancy. He calculated maintenance costs, income projections, every possible number, and drilled it all into Matt's head. No matter what the seller threw at them, Matt had an answer. The result? A building priced at $2.5 million, purchased for just $1.56 million. Now Bernard walked into that building like a king. Bank managers who once ignored him now scrambled to shake his hand. Even the manager who once rejected him hung his head in shame. With new financial backing, Bernard's business exploded. He was even invited to meet the vice president. But he wasn't satisfied. Returning to his hometown in Texas, he found nothing had changed. Black people were still second-class citizens. Even the water fountains were segregated. So he set his sights on a childhood symbol, the bank he once eavesdropped outside of. His father warned him, "Texas ain't LA, racism here runs deep." Joe tried to stop him too. "If you push too hard, you could end up in prison." But Bernard had one answer: "I'm not stopping." They bought 80% of the bank through Matt, but the locals were suspicious. Inside the bank, white execs still ran the show. Bernard had to operate in secret, issuing loans to black families. That drew unwanted attention. Jack, the owner's son, started snooping. He noticed all the loans were going to black folks and began investigating. One night, Bernard and Matt were secretly discussing strategy, unaware they were being watched. The next day, Jack showed up. "Hand over your shares, or I'll blow the whistle." Bernard called his bluff, but he underestimated just how far Jack would go. The government soon launched a full audit. To deflect the heat, Matt convinced them to buy another bank with him as the front man. It worked, temporarily, but Texas wasn't changing. Graffiti still smeared the walls with slurs. Worse, Matt had no idea how to manage a bank. Employees were approving reckless loans, $100K when people only applied for $10,000. The place was a mess. An audit was scheduled for the next day. Matt turned to Bernard. To sneak in, Bernard posed as a janitor. During the audit, Matt would pretend to need a bathroom break just to get Bernard's advice. Bernard quickly spotted the problem. These weren't mistakes, they were traps. It was all Jack's doing. Eventually, their license was revoked. The bank shut down. Bernard was devastated. When he tried to reason with the auditors, they threatened to arrest him. He shouted, "What law did I break? Since when is it a crime for a black man to do business?" But respect is expensive, and his skin color had already decided his fate. Still, because of his connection to the vice president, the auditors offered a deal. "Give up the bank, admit your wealth was illegally earned, and you walk free." Bernard refused. He wanted his day in court, but the system was rigged. That night, they offered Matt a deal: testify against Bernard and we'll drop 75 years off your sentence. In court, Matt threw Bernard under the bus. Watching the white judges dismiss everything, Bernard stood up and said, "No loans, no homes, no homes, no business, no wealth." And then what? You exclude an entire race from the American dream. Why? In the end, Bernard and Joe lost everything: 177 properties, 2 banks, all gone. Bernard was sentenced to 3 years. But here's the twist. Before the seizure, Bernard had quietly asked Matt to buy 2 properties in the Bahamas. When he got out of prison, those properties were their comeback. He and Joe returned to Texas and kept renting homes to black families, chipping away at segregation, one property at a time. The Banker is based on a true story. Because of Bernard and Joe's fight, in 1968, Congress passed the Fair Housing Act banning racial discrimination in housing. That's when everything started to change for black Americans. To change the world, you need more than just a brilliant mind. You need faith, grit, and a heart that never backs down. If this story moved you like it moved me, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm Lucky Recap, and I'll catch you in the next one.